Exclusive contract with Feilu Novel Network novel. Daming. My father Zhu Youjian. My name is Zhu Cizhao, Zhu Youjian's fourth son. War Warehouse Online. The War Warehouse contains weapons, supplies, and troops. Currently unlocked, weapons. War Warehouse Trading Currency. Exchange Point. Host, please kill the enemy as soon as possible and collect exchange points. Detected that the host does not have War Warehouse weapons, extracting new players to use welfare extraction is in progress. As the mechanical voice spoke, one virtual screen after another popped up and closed, followed by the rotating gift box. The next second, the gift box disappeared and became a domineering heavy machine gun. Zhu Cizhao expressed a little bit of excitement. Feilu Novel Network reminds you that this novel and its characters are purely fictional. If there are any similarities, they are purely coincidental and should not be imitated. Chapter 1, under Zhu Cizhao. War Warehouse Online. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Over there. Chase. The roaring roar directly awakened Zhu Cizhao. Immediately after, before he realized where he was, he instinctively let go of the thing he was holding in his hand due to the excruciating pain in his hand. Afterwards, his world spun around and he finally realized that he was on a galloping horse, and he had just let go of the reins. Zhu Cizhao. Shit, what's going on? At that moment, his heart suddenly stopped beating, and then he strangled his neck and turned his perspective, being lifted to another horse. Prince. Are you okay? The galloping guard lowered his body and tried to protect Zhu Cizhao, who was lying horizontally on the horse. At the same time, he also heard the response from the other party. Nothing. Nothing. Zhu Cizhao felt that his internal organs were almost being displaced. He couldn't figure out why he suddenly appeared here the next second, even though he was still playing and fighting one. But now it's obvious that we're not exploring this. When we ask east and west, a group of people behind us gallop and bite them tightly, with a murderous aura. At first glance, it's clear that the enemy is not good. In addition, this person refers to themselves as the prince, and once this title is given, things become more complicated. It is obvious that he is being pursued. Zhu Cizhao grabbed his horse, trying to balance his body and observe the surroundings. After only 2 breaths, he decisively said, "Go left." The guard furrowed his brows and said, "It's commendable to wait for you." Zhu Cizhao was so anxious that his head was covered in sweat, some were painful from being bumped, and some were sweating from a life or death crisis. He exclaimed in an urgent voice, "The terrain on the left is high and there is a dense forest, which can disperse and interfere with their troops. If there is anything, let's leave first before we talk." When the guards think about it, it's the same principle. Compared to the troops of the Jiading Marquis who are tens of miles away, protecting the survival of the Yongwang is the most important thing. He grabbed the reins and ran wildly up the high slope to the left. Zhu Cizhao breathed a sigh of relief. The most taboo way for fewer people to have more is to collide head-on. The most likely way to survive now is to disperse these people first. And the undulating dense forest on this high slope is their protective barrier. It can be imagined to be perfect, but reality always slaps the face with Murphy's Law. Just as he was about to enter the dense forest on the high ground, he heard the sound of breaking through the air from behind, more than once. Prince. The guard had been on the battlefield for a long time, and he could hear what was behind him just by his voice. He bent down and lay on Zhu Cizhao, blocking the dense arrows for him. A muffled sound pierced through the flesh and skin one after another, and then the horse was also shot. The whole horse fell off at an angle, leaving Zhu Cizhao dizzy and confused. But he was well protected by the guards. Even if he was thrown off his horse, there were only scratches on his body. Zhu Cizhao got up from the ground and immediately saw a man with arrows inserted all over his body, like a hedgehog. The opponent twisted their left leg and right arm in an impossible direction, especially their right arm, which was bent outward to form a right angle. So what he just heard was the sound of a bone fracture. "Prince! I can't escort you anymore, please run. Run!" The guard's half-face was covered in blood, his teeth were knocked out, and his voice was mournful, making him look like a demon. Zhu Cizhao was startled and trembled, but after regaining his senses, he had no time to run. Those pursuers stopped at the slope, several tens of meters away, holding bows and arrows. As long as he dared to run, those bows and arrows could penetrate him. A man dressed better than others rode out with a loud voice, "The Eternal King quickly threw it, and we will not harm you at all." Zhu Cizhao glanced at the lifeless guards, who seemed to have lost their breath. He felt waves of coldness, dizziness, and coldness in his hands and feet. Never hurt him at all. What kind of nonsense are you talking to these people here when they were shooting arrows just now? He is not a fool. He was able to make these people kill him first, and then he said that the reason he wouldn't kill him was probably because he was worth more alive than dead. He will definitely die if he falls among these people, it's just a difference in how much torture he suffered before death. Just as he was filled with despair, a mechanical sound came to his mind. War Warehouse Online. The War Warehouse contains weapons, supplies, and troops. Currently unlocked, weapons. War Warehouse Trading Currency. Exchange Point, host, please kill the enemy as soon as possible and collect exchange points. Detected that the host does not have War Warehouse weapons, extracting new players to use welfare extraction is in progress. As the mechanical voice spoke, one virtual screen after another popped up and closed, followed by the rotating gift box. The next second, the gift box disappeared and became a domineering heavy machine gun. Congratulations on the host extraction. Zhu Cizhao didn't look at the rest of the conversation. He tentatively reached out to grab the MG-08 heavy machine gun suspended in front of him on the virtual screen. He touched the cold handle of the gun, and his eyes lit up. His strong desire for survival unleashed an unprecedented force, pulling out the overly heavy machine gun. In front of everyone's eyes, a small thing that looked like an iron rod and a cannon was taken out of thin air by King Yong. "What is that?" someone exclaimed in shock, and they all saw Zhu Cizhao pulling out a strange object out of nowhere. Such a peculiar scene was seen by the people at the front of the team, and most of them were extremely panicked. After all, Zhu Cizhao is also a prince. When they pursue and kill the prince, the justice of heaven is unjust, and it is normal to be punished by heaven. Isn't it a heavenly punishment? Nonsense. The heavenly punishment will definitely fall directly on us and others. How could we get into the hands of a young child of the Eternal King? Someone retorted inwardly. Some people were also fearfully engaged in a two-legged battle, instinctively retreating and saying, "This Eternal King must have borrowed the power of ghosts and gods. Yongwang aimed that thing at us." Someone exclaimed, but the leading general didn't have time to give orders. He quickly stabilized his morale and loudly said, "Don't be afraid, soldiers. It's just a small iron knot, not even our long sword in hand." Bang! The sound of guns without any sound reduction not only silenced the chaotic pursuit team of several hundred people, but also silenced them. The horses were also startled, one by one roaring as they turned around to run, but as someone grabbed the reins tightly, they could only keep spinning in place. What's going on? Who was injured just now? That's a musket. When did the musket make such a loud noise? As if water droplets fell into an oil pot, after the gunshot, not only did the horse become restless and want to run, but the other soldiers were also very uneasy. The one sent to pursue the prince was a small general who had been brought by the king along the way. When the small general ordered troops before, he also leaned more towards the peasant brothers. Although these people are as brave as soldiers who have been specially trained to join the army, they find it difficult to restrain themselves from obeying military orders when encountering unexpected situations. Chapter 2. Unification of D countries' armed forces, seeking flowers. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Therefore, even if they know it's not the right time, they still can't control talking to each other without deliberate training. Did you see it? It was really taken out of thin air. It's so much fun, there's no place to hide it. Indeed, the Emperor's son is different. Will there be a heavenly punishment when we pursue the prince? Fuck off your mother. Wax rice, you're too brave to join the army and embarrass your ancestors. Various discussions were heard one after another, including those who looked down upon Zhu Cizhao, those who were puzzled, those who were afraid, and even those who were admired in their hearts. Silence, silence. The leading general's face was gloomy. The dying deer still knows how to struggle, let alone the prince. The eternal king has reached a desperate situation, and now it's just a dying struggle. It's all fake. Charge. Capturing the prince eternal king alive, a reward of 1,000 taels. As soon as he finished speaking, many people immediately took the lead in rushing out. Others, seeing someone rushing ahead, naturally became less afraid of retribution. After all, if the heavenly punishment were to strike, it would also strike the people in front of them first. They excitedly rushed towards 1,000 taels of gold one by one. Zhu Cizhao on the highland touched the slightly heated machine gun, then lowered his face and aimed the muzzle at the people. If he had just arrived in this world, he probably wouldn't be able to overcome the psychological barrier of killing. But seeing the person who was still protecting him earlier, now in such a tragic situation, his hands and feet are broken and he is on the brink of death. The pity that Zhu Cizhao should not have had disappeared long ago. As for things like human nature or pity, it's better to wait for him to survive and then think carefully. Others rushed over on horseback, while others shot arrows. Zhu Cizhao held a heavy machine gun and hid himself behind the horse's belly, then got ready to shoot. He was so nervous that his hands were covered in sweat. He rubbed his hands against his clothes, and without hesitation, he aimed his gun at these people and began to cover them with fire. Bang 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 bang. Every sound represents that someone is injured. The horses and soldiers rushing ahead collapsed like dominoes. Originally, they were all rushing, but their sudden fall directly knocked down the horses behind them. If the soldiers fell from that horse and were lucky enough to not die or break bones, there was still Zhu Cizhao indiscriminately shooting at them from behind. A bullet goes out and explodes into bloodstains, while another bullet enters the horse and human body at a terrifying speed. Just one bullet is enough to destroy a person's mobility. Zhu Cizhao is a loyal fan of ground warfare 1. Although he has never touched a real gun before, he still has the sharpness and accuracy he should have. He strives not to waste any bullets. Reality is not a TV drama. A bullet that causes severe damage can completely take away a life, and no one can counter-kill Zhu Cizhao with a bullet hole. What weapon is this? Step back. Step back. Don't rush. Originally, hundreds of people came over, but now they have directly lost more than half. Judging from the demeanor of Prince Yong, it is feared that even if they bring in more people, it will be of no use then. The too terrifying killing power almost caused Yongwang to rotate the black, hot, and red pipe, and then he collapsed a pile of injured people in unison. The musket in front of it is not worth mentioning at all. They have no hobby of letting their soldiers die. The people below retreated, getting further and further away. Zhu Cizhao let go of the heavy machine gun in a daze, feeling a sharp pain in his shoulder. My nose also smelled a burnt smell, as the barrel of the gun, which had turned red from continuous high-speed shooting, burned the horse's fur. However, the horse was shot not only in the thigh but also in the neck, and was already dead. Hiss. Shit. Zhu Cizhao grinned and pressed the shoulder that had just been hit by recoil, then shifted his attention to the virtual screen in front of him. After glancing at the over 1,000 additional exchange points on the screen, he immediately arrived at the man who had just protected him. "Brother, please hold on, let me see, let me see. Just now, due to the entry of exchange points, in addition to the weapons that were opened from the beginning, the military and supplies were also opened. He quickly rummaged through the supplies and saw antibiotics, gauze, and other medications. But he is not studying medical care, and he doesn't know how to start in this area at all. Since he already has a system, why isn't there a life-saving divine pill and elixir in the supplies? Prince. The guard never fell asleep. He could feel the passing of life, and he heard the deafening sound of guns, probably knowing that the Eternal King had one. I'm here. Zhu Cizhao swallowed his saliva and took the other person's hand, which was covered in blood. He held a strong breath in his heart, feeling very uncomfortable. The person who rescued him from under the hooves of a horse after coming into this world is going to die, and his existence with a system cannot save him. He said with a complicated mood, if you have any last words, just say them. I'll handle them for you depending on the situation. In fact, what Zhu Cizhao said, the guards could no longer hear him. His eyes widened, and he grabbed the other person's hand with great force, heading east. The troops of Jiading are over there to pick you up. I am humble, I am fortunate enough to live up to my fate. After saying these words, his head fell weakly and he lost his breath. Zhu Cizhao. He didn't expect people to disappear like this, you. He sighed and released the hand. After releasing his hand, he rubbed the dried bloodstains of horses and people on his hand and began to look at his own system. To be honest, Zhu Cizhao was already prepared to help the other party fulfill their wishes just now. After all, the plot unfolds like this in TV dramas and novels. But I didn't expect that the other party was trying to settle him down before he died, and the only thing about himself was just a sentence of, fortunately not to be humiliated. It can be said that Zhu Cizhao has read too much. Sometimes he can't understand this kind of thinking, but not understanding it doesn't mean he won't be touched by this spirit. Setting aside unnecessary ideas, he carefully examined his own system. The items that can be exchanged in the supplies include food, clothing, medical supplies, as well as gold, silver, and copper. However, the exchange points for these three minerals are quite high. A little silver is enough to exchange for 3 cotton coats. After quickly calculating various supplies in his mind, he turned his attention to the military column. Click on the army, and a long list of various soldiers pops up on the virtual screen with a swish. Basically, they were all foreign faces, and Zhu Cizhao's gaze fell silent as he scanned the notes of these troops. Uniformity of D country's military branches. When he took the EP1-10 exam, he took English instead of German. So the question is, have these soldiers from D country popularized English? Forget it, the most important thing now is safety. Zhu Cizhao glanced at his exchange point, which was over 1,500. He had shot nearly 100 people just now, far less than 1,000. Can Chapter 3 be traversed again? You are listening at novelfull.audio. That is to say, these head ratios may be 1 to 10. To purchase an ordinary infantry, it requires 80 exchange points. Be conservative, Zhu Cizhao bought 10 infantry first. After he clicked to confirm the purchase, the system popped up another interface, asking him to choose a place to place these 10 D-country soldiers. Zhu Cizhao moved the circle and threw the person 3 meters away from him. He opened his eyes wide and saw 10 neatly arranged soldiers standing in front of him, appearing in the blink of an eye. The soldiers had deep eyebrows and eyes, all of whom had typical foreign appearances. When they saw Zhu Cizhao, they immediately knelt down on one knee and said in unison, "General." It is in Chinese. Very standard Mandarin. Does this system come with a language change feature? Okay. Zhu Cizhao was very satisfied and stood up, saying, "Get up." So all 10 infantry soldiers stood up, each wearing the same uniform and equipped with the same weapons. Zhu Cizhao arranged for them, "You 3 find a place to dig a pit and bury him properly." You 7 come with me to check who else is alive and count how many people have died. Zhu Cizhao said he exchanged 10 exchange points for an ordinary pistol to hold, just in case. He led people downhill and saw a dense group of people lying on the slope. The damage caused by heavy machine guns was terrifying. At this moment, the lying horse and the blood flowing from the corpse directly accumulated a pool of blood on the ground. Zhu Cizhao, holding pistols in both hands, carefully looked over one by one. The 2 soldiers followed him, and the rest went out to count how many people had died. Zhu Cizhao mainly wanted to see if there were any living people. He planned to ask his identity and what the situation was now. Because until now he only knew that he was a prince being chased, and then he disappeared. The identity background is completely blank. Just as he was thinking about it, a person lying in the bottom of his eye suddenly moved. He instinctively moved his foot away, and the other person stabbed him with a dagger, fast, accurate, and ruthless throughout the process, without making any unnecessary sound. Zhu Cizhao's pupils dilated and he instinctively fired a shot. With a loud bang, the bullet shattered the opponent's face, and the 2 hands holding long daggers were chopped off by the soldiers of D country and fell to the ground. "General, are you okay?" The soldier looked at Zhu Cizhao. Red, and white blood and brain plasma shot out, splashing onto Zhu Cizhao's face. After he regained consciousness, he instinctively wiped his face, and then smelled the faint smell of blood on his face. He feels a bit nauseous. Shit, he wiped his face clean with his sleeves. What's going on here? He waved his hand as he looked at his D-country soldier and said, "I'm fine. You don't need to count anymore, just check if there are any living people. Remember not to kill them, bring them over. I have something to ask them. Obey me." After Zhu Cizhao finished giving orders, he went uphill and rubbed his face nervously as he walked. "I always feel like there's still brain tissue left on my face. It's too stimulating, the way a person's head explodes in front of them is too stimulating. No, it can't be considered an explosion, it's just that the part where the bullet hit shattered, and everything else is fine." After he walked up, he found that these soldiers from D country were carrying corpses tied into hedgehogs. He quickly asked, "Has it been dug up?" "No," said the soldier of D country very rigorously. "We need to measure the size of the pit needed to bury this gentleman." After explaining to Zhu Cizhao, they quickly disposed of the arrows on the body and carried it away. Zhu Cizhao followed over, and then he watched as the 3 soldiers of D country carefully discussed and began to draw boundaries. Then, they took out their weapons. Daggers. "Start digging a pit with this silver glittering dagger." Zhu Cizhao stared blankly at them digging a few times, then reacted and patted his forehead, using 10 exchange points to buy items such as hoes and shovels. "You use this, it's fast." Several soldiers from D country glanced at the tools and without hesitation put away their weapons, starting to use shovels and hoes less proficiently. After using it for a while, the proficiency rapidly increased, and they worked hard to create miracles. In just a short while, they dug down a layer tirelessly. And Zhu Cizhao was studying his own system. After killing a person at close range just now, he recorded 10 exchange points. If he guesses correctly, then 10 exchange points is 1 life, and the exchange points generated by this life are exactly the exchange points required to exchange for an ordinary infantry. Simply put, if 1 person dies on the opponent's side, they can have 1 more person on their side. There are still some details that have not been verified, such as whether killing horses or animals will score points, but now he does not intend to waste time on them. General. Soon, the soldiers of D country came up the slope with 2 people, and they had one thing in common. Their hands were all chopped off. The incision is neat, clearly made by these soldiers. Looking at the soldier with a pale and twisted face, Zhu Cizhao frowned and said in confusion, "What's going on? Why did you chop off their hands?" "Without a hand, it won't pose a threat to the general," explained the soldier who had followed Zhu Cizhao seriously before. Zhu Cizhao looked at his expression and realized that he couldn't recognize if the other person was lying. He frowned and ordered, "Just tie it up next time, don't torture people like this." Soldiers. Yes, General. Zhu Cizhao looked at the two people who were kneeling on the ground, their faces covered in pain and cold sweat, and said, "Who's under your command? Why are you chasing me? Who am I?" The two of them had long been scared out of their wits by Zhu Cizhao. They didn't expect to pretend to be dead and avoid a disaster inside. One was already in pain and couldn't speak, while the other reluctantly answered Zhu Cizhao. You are the eternal king, the crown prince. The younger one is a subordinate of Li Go. I have been ordered by the prince to live and capture you alive. Chuang Wang. Zhu Cizhao frowned and immediately reacted, "Chuang Wang Li Zicheng." Yes, yes. Zhu Cizhao pinched his nose, and Li Zicheng, a prominent figure in the Ming dynasty, was the leader of the peasant uprising. That is to say, he has now arrived at the end of the Ming dynasty. Has he traveled back to ancient times? But as a science student, he doesn't know much about history. He only barely knew a few major milestones, knowing only about the Qin dynasty in modern times, but now that he's from the Ming dynasty, it's like a drop in the bucket. Never mind, the previous guard mentioned Jiading Ho. He will go and take a look first. Then decide what to do next. Chapter 4. Jiading Ho's Barracks. Seeking Flowers. You are listening at novelfull.audio. This translator is experiencing an error, please try another translator. Chapter 5. Eternal King Presents to King Chuang. Seeking Flowers. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Jiading Ho looked serious and said, "These ghosts don't speak the same language as us. If we take advantage of our unpreparedness and steal confidential information to spread overseas," Zhu Cizhao said, "they can understand what you're saying." As he spoke, he glanced at the soldiers pushing bicycles behind him and said, "He doubts your loyalty to me. General, we will never betray you." The words spoken from their mouths were more accurate than those of Jiading Ho. Jiading Ho frowned quickly and then said, "Since the prince can't bear to let them go, let's not let them live outside the military camp and have someone take turns guarding them." "That's it. No need," Zhu Cizhao just said, "just let them give me a place to guard. They are my close guards. If they wander around without my consent, then it's not too late to find a way to deal with it. If it weren't for them, I would have died long ago at the hands of the adventurers." "Why, are you trying to release my life-saving benefactor?" Zhu Cizhao frowned and looked very unhappy. "I dare not." Zhu Cizhao's skeptical expression instantly reminded Jiading Ho of the person who had just had morning tea with someone with a smile on his face. The next moment, he could order someone to thoroughly investigate their corruption and directly cut off their family's head. He didn't even react in his mind, and as soon as his legs softened, he knelt down for Zhu Cizhao. "I'm just afraid that your safety, Prince, will be threatened. Since you trust them, I naturally trust them too. I believe it extremely, without any hesitation, and I apologize to Prince." He was so anxious that his speech was confusing and his sentences were not fluent. The people who were secretly spying around were surprised to see this scene. They didn't expect that the Eternal King would be so powerful. They had just met Jiading Ho for less than a stick of incense, and he made him tremble and kneel twice. Zhu Cizhao asked people to get up and said, "Don't kneel now. It's already dawn when you kneel again. Hurry up and lead the way, I'll have something to eat and rest." Jiading Ho got up and lowered his head, making it difficult for everyone to see his expression clearly. "Yes, please come with me," he said, and 10 soldiers from D country calmly pushed their bicycles and followed behind Zhu Cizhao, unaffected by the prying expressions around them. "What is this they're pushing? It has wheels, it's a car. I saw them riding from a distance just now. Can this thing be ridden? I'm afraid I can't even get up." These ghosts often don't have enough to eat, and their hungry eyes are all sunken in. I've only seen a red-haired ghost before, but it's the first time I've seen one in this color. I don't know what the prince wants them to do, they just look a bit better. It's not really useful. Do you pay attention to the lamp that the prince is holding? Could it be a night pearl inside? The wind was strong just now, and the light inside didn't even flash. The night pearl. I heard it's very valuable. Walking all the way, Zhu Cizhao had a good memory and jotted down the path. The tent given to him is located next to the main tent. Jiading did not say that he would be placed in the main account, and Zhu Cizhao was not interested in getting entangled in this matter. After the two of them had a harmonious conversation for a while, Jiading left. After a while, food was brought in. Noodles, vegetables, 2 pieces of meat, and a side dish. It's gone. Zhu Cizhao stopped the soldier who was about to leave after putting down his things and said, "Wait a minute, let's have some more food and prepare a serving for 10 people." Obedience. The soldier responded and then cautiously left. On the way to Zhu Cizhao's arrival, he asked and confirmed that they needed to eat and drink water like normal people, which was why they were prepared for them. The taste of noodles is average, the meat is very meaty, and it's stuffed with teeth. The dish is a bit salty. Zhu Cizhao, who had been baptized by thousands of Chinese delicacies in later generations, struggled to put all these things into his mouth, and after eating them, his stomach relaxed a bit. He exchanged another pistol for it. He had these people dismantle the previous heavy machine gun, divide it into several parts, each person carrying a little, and then install it when needed. These cheapest infantry may only come with daggers, but they have a lot of experience in firearms combat. Extremely skilled in dismantling firearms, there is no need to worry about not being able to assemble them after dismantling. He handed the pistol to the soldier guarding his bed and said, "Take this. If anyone is planning to ambush me, just use the gun to destroy their limbs." Zhu Cizhao's voice paused as he saw that his exchange point suddenly increased by 20 points, which meant 2 lives. It seems that the 2 people who were chopped off before died, and they can be considered quite alive. They have persisted until now before dying. After discarding my limbs, that's all. I'll interrogate you when I wake up, Zhu Cizhao continued. After you finish your meal, you'll take turns guarding the night. Obey me. Zhu Cizhao fell asleep. He slept soundly on his side, but someone stayed up all night because of him. Why? Jiading has seen His Royal Highness Yongwang, so he wants to go back on his word. A young man with a thin face, dressed in coarse linen clothes and a scholarly aura, looked at Jiading with a smile on his face. Suddenly, I'm calling someone over, maybe it's not Hongmen banquet waiting for someone. Sir, I'm overthinking, Jiading said. But I don't know what Chuang Wang's plan is, so I want to inquire about it. It will be convenient for me to cooperate here at that time. Is that right? The scholar smiled and said, my master's side is not something you can get involved in yet. However, if you can personally send the Eternal King over before my master ascends to the high position, then the benefits must be indispensable. Well, there's no problem sending it over, Jiading whispered. However, not all of us in the army are our confidants. If we want to send Prince Yong over, we may have to use the banner of reinforcements. The scholar squinted his eyes and said, why, Lord Ho is still swaying on both sides. Reinforcements. I'm afraid we've either reached the destination or the other side is tough. Where's the reinforcements? Jiading Ho's thoughts were seen through and he was not in a hurry. He took a sip of wine and patted his face with a smile. If I offer the Eternal King to the Chuang King, I'm afraid it won't be recorded in history and will have a lasting reputation. Sir, please think about it for us. The scholar sneered and stopped talking, only eating and drinking. Those who came from the peasant uprising had some degree of obsession with food, so even if they were so angry that they wanted to put Jiading Ho's face in the food, he still endured to finish the meal. After finishing his meal, he wiped his mouth and sneered at Jiading Ho, who was eagerly watching him. Marquis, you can naturally hesitate for a while, but I don't know how Prince Yong would feel if he knew about your swaying behavior on both sides, Marquis. Jiading Ho showed an expression of shock and anger, and as soon as the scholar left, his expression immediately changed. Chapter 6. The Unstable Marquis of Jiading, Seeking Flowers. You are listening at novelfull.audio. This translator is experiencing an error, please try another translator. Chapter 7. Marquis Jiading, follow my king to the north. Seeking freshness. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Thinking of this, Marquis Jiading smiled and shook his head, saying, Sir, please come back. The scholar in cloth smiled slightly upon hearing these words. However, he doesn't seem to have given up. But he continued to speak, is Marquis making a good choice? Marquis Jiading remained silent. He. The scholar in cloth smiled again and said, Chongzhen won't be able to hold on for long. The only option facing him now is to move south. Chongzhen would not move south. With his temperament, he would rather die in the capital than move south. After all, Emperor Qingzu once established ancestral teachings, with the emperor guarding the country's gates and the king sacrificing the state. For Chongzhen, if this battle was not successful, it would be benevolent. Upon hearing this, Marquis Jiading remained speechless. He never knew the temperament of Emperor Chongzhen. After millions of simulations in his mind, Marquis Jiading finally understood that there was no future to join the adventurer. Perhaps these peasant armies and scholars do not understand. But how could one not understand this truth without being a Grand Marquis of Jiading? The bandits only accelerated the downfall of the Ming dynasty, but they will not be the ultimate winners. Nowadays, there is great chaos in the world, and the people, from thieves to thieves, have no land to cultivate. Can you join the bandits and have land to cultivate? Chuang himself cannot even provide food and salaries. As the saying goes, the Ming army was dissatisfied with their pay, and full pay was invincible. Where can I receive full pay? Emperor Taiji of Liaodong. No, now it's Dorgan and Xuanji. Thinking of this, Marquis Jiading also smiled slightly and said, Sir, please go back. Do you need someone to send you back later? Upon hearing this, the scholar in cloth immediately became extremely serious. He stared coldly at Marquis Jiading, and after a moment, he smiled helplessly and said, Okay. Leave only one good word, then turn around and leave. I don't even look back. To be honest, at this moment, Marquis Jiading's heart was somewhat shaken. He didn't know where the confidence of this white-faced scholar came from, but from his graceful back, Marquis Jiading's heart was very conflicted. He is very afraid of choosing the wrong team. The white-faced scholar is also right. He should stick to his own ideas and waver from side to side. Such a person will not have a good ending. At this moment, Zhu Cizhao is looking at the panel in the system. I haven't studied it carefully yet. This system, the war warehouse system, is truly as described at the beginning of the system. Only provide weapons, supplies, troops, etc. Fortunately, the supplies in the war warehouse seem to be German equipment from World War II. As long as we make good use of it and form a team of German mechanics, there is no problem at all. This is the exchange point, it's really too few. I have to find a way to kill a few enemies myself. When it comes to killing enemies, it's actually easy to say. Nowadays, the world is in chaos, and the intruders are everywhere. And my current position is located in Jiading, Jiangnan, thousands of miles away from the capital. If you want to kill the enemy, you still have to walk north. At least, we have to walk to places such as Hunan and Shandong. There are only a few adventurers in the Central Plains region. Thinking of this, Zhu Cizhao approached Marquis Jiading. Marquis Jiading, how many people are currently in your hands? Zhu Cizhao spoke up and asked. Upon hearing this, Marquis Jiading lowered his head and thought for a moment before saying, returning to the prince, I have only 3,000 elite soldiers in my hands. 3,000. Zhu Cizhao lowered his head for a moment, then nodded and said, enough, follow me north. We recapture the capital. What? Upon hearing these words, Marquis Jiading was stunned and stood still. Are you joking? Just 3,000 people want to recapture the capital. How could this be possible? Nowadays, outside the gate of the capital city, there are 100,000 intruders eyeing the enemy. He quickly shook his head and shouted, Prince, don't be impulsive. Nowadays, outside the capital city, we are already surrounded by the intruders and have no way out. It's difficult for our messenger soldiers to enter and report to the emperor. Various feudal lords and horses are still gathering, and we don't have a main force to fight against the bandits. Upon hearing these words, Zhu Cizhao shook his head slowly. The expression also became increasingly serious. He stared at the Marquis of Jiading in front of him and said in a deep voice, are you saying that the emperor is trapped in the capital, and Wu Sangui plans to put the Tartars inside the pass? We can only remain indifferent and watch helplessly here. Upon hearing these words, Marquis Jiading trembled all over his body. If one's own troops and horses are enough to kill back to the capital and rescue the emperor, then these merits are in front of them, why don't one want to do it? Unfortunately, now I only have 3,000 soldiers and horses in my hands. It's not enough to resist the intruder at all. If I go, I can only train my skills for the bandits. Looking at Zhu Cizhao in front of him, his expression didn't seem to be joking at all. Marquis Jiading stared at Zhu Cizhao with a troubled expression and asked, Your Highness, are you sure you're not joking? We only have 3,000 people, what can we do when we go to the capital? We can't do anything. Now, the only way is to wait for all the feudal lords to gather their troops, and we will bring our large army back to the capital. Zhu Cizhao knew he was a historical idiot. But one thing, he is still clear about it. Aren't those feudal lords harboring their own ulterior motives? They longed for Chongzhen and his sons to die in the capital. In this way, the emperor's position will be their turn. And among these feudal lords who wanted to proclaim themselves emperor, Zhu Yusong was the first to bear the brunt. Counting the time, Zhu Yusong should have already established a new regime in Jiading, right? Moreover, it is estimated that the Marquis of Jiading has already informed Zhu Yusong. On the other hand, Zhu Yusong looked at the letter in his hand with an indescribable complex emotion in his heart. Li Zicheng, this useless person, surprisingly let Zhu Cizhao go. Now, the whereabouts of several sons of Emperor Chongzhen are unknown. But Zhu Cizhao actually ran away, and it was not far from him in Jiading. Should I keep him or not? If we keep him, then as the only surviving son of Chongzhen, the officials of Jiading will definitely support Zhu Cizhao as emperor. What kind of reason should I use to kill him? The more Zhu Yusong thought about it, the less it tasted. I originally thought that after Li Zicheng's great destruction of the capital, the Chongzhen family would definitely not survive. At that time, I will declare myself emperor in Nanjing without any obstacles. But now it seems that there is another hidden danger. I have to find a way to kill him myself. Thinking of this, Zhu Yusong immediately wrote a letter to the Marquis of Jiading. Marquis Jiading, this person is just a wallflower. Since Li Zicheng took Luoyang and Kaifeng, he has been wavering. But one thing Zhu Yusong can be certain of is that Marquis Jiading will definitely not follow Zhu Cizhao, that yellow-mouthed child. After all, Zhu Cizhao had no soldiers or soldiers under his command. At this time, before Chongzhen died, various feudal lords had already begun to plan how to divide up the Ming dynasty after Chongzhen's death. Chapter 8. Chongzhen hasn't died yet, so let's put this discussion aside. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Absolutely ridiculous. The reason for the downfall of the late Ming dynasty is all attributed to these selfish feudal lords. Half a day. The messenger soldiers rushed 800 miles and delivered Zhu Youjian's letter to the hands of Marquis Jiading. At this moment, Marquis Jiading was also very anxious in his heart. After all, I have Zhu Cizhao, a hot potato, in my hand. Chuang will definitely not let go of the hidden danger of Zhu Cizhao. This time, he sent a scholar in white to negotiate but was unsuccessful. Next time, you won't be a scholar in white. But it's a big army. However, the good news is, he received a letter from Jinling. Marquis Jiading looked at the letter in his hand, not to mention how excited he was. Since receiving the news of Li Zicheng besieging the capital, Marquis Jiading has not been able to sleep well every day. Today, at first glance, Prince Fu Zhu Youjian urgently convened 6 troops in Jinling to discuss countermeasures. Since the 6 ministries of Jinling have already begun to enter the right track, doesn't it mean that the southern court has already been established? Since the court in the south has been established, the army must have also assembled. Thinking of this, Marquis Jiading immediately told Zhu Cizhao the good news. What? King Fu asked me to go to Jinling. Zhu Cizhao was a bit curious. Is the movement of King Fu so fast? By this calculation, as long as Chongzhen dies, King Fu will definitely be the first to declare himself emperor. After all, he controls the entire court of Jinling. However, Zhu Cizhao was not worried that Prince Fu would rush to kill him and proclaim himself emperor. After all, Chongzhen has not died yet. Before Chongzhen's death, all outcomes were unknown. Fu Wang Zhu Youjian controlled himself, and if Chongzhen died, he would also have to die. But if Chongzhen did not die and Li Zicheng was defeated, then Zhu Youjian could seek credit from the emperor by protecting Chongzhen's only surviving son. What a skilled abacus! Why was the Ming dynasty able to perish so quickly? Did not establish the southern Song regime like in the Song dynasty. He. The reason is self-evident. Various feudal lords, each with ulterior motives. They are all on the brink of national downfall, still calculating against each other. Officials are corrupt, and even feudal lords want to proclaim themselves emperor. Thinking of this, Zhu Cizhao shook his head helplessly. Falling into the hands of Zhu Youjian, I don't have a chance to turn things around. After all, Zhu Youjian is a powerful person, and following him has no chance of killing enemies and accumulating points. Without points, one cannot exchange weapons and armies. Moreover, the death of Chongzhen has become a foregone conclusion. If he doesn't do something, Chongzhen will definitely die. But at this moment not far ahead, suddenly a flustered sound rang out. Enemy attack! Enemy attack! A messenger rushed panting into the room of Zhu Cizhao and Marquis Jiading. He was sweating profusely and shouted loudly, Marquis! It's not good! It's not good! 30 miles ahead, a large number of intruders have been found. What? Marquis Jiading knew that Chuang would definitely not spare Zhu Cizhao. But he didn't expect that this move to challenge the king would be so fast. In less than a day, the army of King Chuang was killed. Is it difficult? So Li Zicheng also has manpower in Jiangnan. But now, it must be too late to notify Prince Fu Zhu Youjian to come and support. The only way for oneself is to retreat backwards. How many enemies are there? On the side, Zhu Cizhao still had a calm expression on his face. Marquis Jiading on the side shook his head helplessly. What a newborn calf is not afraid of tigers. How many enemies do you need to ask? Since the enemy is coming towards you, the number of people will naturally not be less than that of me, Marquis Jiading. Lord Hui, there are about 5,000 enemies in total. 5,000. Zhu Cizhao lowered his head and thought for a moment. Then pointing to the messenger, he spoke up and said, Prepare to face the battle, we cannot retreat any further. Upon hearing this, the messenger was also frightened and sweated profusely. If it were placed decades ago, the Ming army would not have feared a mere 5,000 ragtag people. But now, the morale of the Ming army has long collapsed. With the addition of the King Chuang, it is almost 100 victories in the Central Plains. The momentum is unstoppable. Many people in the folk even gave the legend of Chuang Wang Li Zicheng. There are even rumors among the lower-class people that Li Zicheng was authorized by Huang Tian to rescue the people from danger. The soldiers at the bottom were even more afraid to face Li Zicheng's peasant army. It was precisely because of this that the Ming army was repeatedly defeated by the mob under Li Zicheng's command. Thinking of this, Zhu Cizhao stared solemnly at the messenger in front of him and said, "What's wrong? Isn't it easy to follow my king's orders?" The messenger looked at the Marquis of Jiading with a puzzled expression on his face. Upon seeing this, Marquis Jiading quickly knelt in front of Zhu Cizhao and arched his hand, saying, "Prince, think twice. Now, the soldiers who break through the thieves are all unstoppable. And my army's morale is low. In addition, I am outnumbered by the enemy. I would like to send someone to inform Prince Fu first. Prince Fu's subordinates have many soldiers and will definitely be able to eliminate that small group of bandits in a short period of time. And will retreat for now." Upon hearing these words, Zhu Cizhao shook his head slowly. Then he looked at Marquis Jiading with a serious expression and said, "Where are we going to withdraw?" "Humph. With only 5,000 people, it's still a temporary group of farmers' army. Aren't you, the 3,000 regular army, even defeated by 5,000 ragtag people?" I. Marquis Jiading looked at Zhu Cizhao with a troubled expression, his brows furrowed. "Humph. Just do as I said." The messenger looked at Marquis Jiading with a puzzled expression on his face. Marquis Jiading could only grit his teeth and nod. The messenger immediately rushed out of the room and began to notify the troops outside the city to prepare for deployment against the enemy. At this moment, Zhu Cizhao also rushed out of the room with a dozen or so German soldiers under his command. And machine guns were erected on the low city walls. The Ming army officers and soldiers present were stunned as they watched the group of Zhu Cizhao's men dressed strangely assembling a black iron rod. Good guy. Isn't it what Yongwang said he wants to resist? As a result, we are sharpening our knives here. But Yongwang is assembling a fire stick with his subordinates here. Everyone's gaze towards Zhu Cizhao became extremely unfriendly. They are all low-level soldiers. Nowadays, the court is almost gone. Death in the hands of bandits is death, and death in the hands of one's own people is also death. Some people even want to turn around and kill Yongwang, and then use Yongwang's head to go find Li Zicheng and exchange their own lives. But Zhu Cizhao still goes his own way. In the system panel, 2 98K bolt-action rifles were exchanged. At present, I have a total of 10 German soldiers under my command. 3 soldiers are enough to be responsible for MG-08 Maxim. The remaining 7 people, 2 holding bolt-action rifles, and 5 ready for backup at any time. After all, with a large number of enemies, it is inevitable that there will be casualties. Especially for those who shoot, they need to expose themselves on the city wall. Chapter 9. Heavenly punishment comes. The army suffered a great defeat. Seeking freshness. You are listening at novelfull.audio. At this moment, Marquis Jiading was in a room not far away. While drinking tea, he looked at Zhu Cizhao, who was commanding the 10 hired soldiers of the Japanese invaders on the city wall. The adjutant on the side slowly approached and arched his hand, saying, "Marquis, that little prince has really eaten the bear's heart and leopard's courage. He actually wants to confront the intruder head-on. Although the enemy is only 60% more than our army, our morale is low. In addition, the city walls here are only less than 2 zhang high. We will surely lose this battle. Instead of dying with that yellow-mouthed child under the thief's knife, it's better. Let's run. I can summon 500 heartfelt martyrs. Defend the Marquis with all my heart." Marquis Jiading heard this. Slowly put down the teacup. He doesn't want to run. But you can't run. If you want to run, you have to take the little prince with you. Otherwise, where are you going? If he betrayed the Chuang Wang, then Li Zicheng naturally wouldn't let himself go. Even if the prince is lost, Prince Fu will not let himself go. Now, the most uncomfortable one is undoubtedly the Marquis of Jiading. Running, his ultimate result is still a dead end. It's better to stay here and fight against the enemy with the little prince. Thinking of this, Marquis Jiading sighed. Turning with a hazy gaze, he looked at the adjutant behind him and said, General Su Qian, prepare to face the enemy. We can't run away. If we lose the prince, do you think which feudal lord in the rear will let us go? Wanted to join the King Chuang. I just drove away the person who broke the king yesterday. Upon hearing this, Mr. Su Qian remained speechless. This Marquis of Jiading has completely blocked his own path. Sure enough, now, this eternal King Zhu Cizhao is really a hot potato. Marquis Jiading was also in great difficulty. If I had known this, I shouldn't have pretended to be such a big head and insisted on coming to pick up Zhu Cizhao. Not long ago the enemy army marched grandly to the city gate. At this time, the bandit army was less than 300 steps away from the camp of Marquis Jiading. Completely within Maxim's range. But it is not within the range of firearms and crossbows. Of course, the bandit army couldn't have imagined that the firearms of the Ming army today are completely different from them in the same era. Ha ha ha. Young men ahead. When King Chuang breaks through the capital and establishes a new dynasty, you will all be the subjects of our new dynasty. Now, the Ming dynasty's fortune has run out. It's better to abandon the dark and join the vanguard army this morning. As long as you obediently offer the eternal King Zhu Cizhao, I guarantee that you will not die. The leading officer shouted loudly at the soldiers on the city wall. Soldiers, take a look at me, I'll take a look at you. Although many people turned their gaze to Zhu Cizhao. But still no one dares to take action against Zhu Cizhao. But Zhu Cizhao had a helpless expression on his face. He waved his hand and spoke to the several German soldiers in front of him, all right, hurry up and shoot. Don't listen to them bewitching the army over there. Yes. Prince. A crisp and fluent Chinese. Next second I saw a German soldier holding a pitch-black gun handle. The next moment Maxim's lacquered black barrel spewed out terrifying tongues of fire. That sound is deafening. Throughout the entire valley, constantly shifting back. Like a series of thunder. Roaming in the sky. Almost in an instant. The shield soldiers standing in the front row collapsed in patches. Like a wheat field passed by a cart. The screams of agony were endless. The sound of a series of thunder echoes continuously in the valley. Countless birds flew out of the woods on both sides in an instant. Even the other defenders on the city wall were so scared that their ears were blocked. Bury your head behind the wall. And ahead, beneath the city wall, the bandit generals were also swept by Maxim for the first time. Instant death. Death without closing one's eyes. The other bandits were frightened and retreated in succession. The battle had not yet begun, and the bandit army began to crumble. I don't know who in the bandit army shouted loudly, "It's a heavenly punishment. It's a heavenly punishment. Woo-woo. We rebels will all be punished by heaven. Run quickly. Run quickly. Ah ah." Countless people and bandits believe in their hearts that it's just a heavenly punishment. The location of the barracks chosen by Marquis Jiading is still acceptable. This place is located between two small mountains, easy to defend but difficult to attack. Although the bandit army has 5,000 people, they are squeezed in this narrow pass, and even if they run, they cannot fully exert themselves. Less than 5 minutes. The death and injury of the bandit army exceeded 500 people. The thief had already died suddenly. The remaining people are just a bunch of headless flies. Zhu Cizhao immediately ordered the entire army to seize the victory and pursue. On the city wall, the soldiers were manipulating Maxim machine guns and continuously shooting towards the enemy in the distance. A German soldier holding a 98K bolt-action rifle, also a few books, one gun at a time, a child. Under the city wall, the gates slowly opened. Thousands of Ming soldiers are full of energy. In the eyes of the enemy, the pitch-black firearm is a heavenly punishment, and in the eyes of the Ming army, it is also a heavenly punishment. This indicates that Daming has not died. Daming will not die either. The 3,000 people under the command of Marquis Jiading have greatly boosted their morale. Start harvesting the bandit army crazily. Standing on the city wall, Zhu Cizhao almost smiled to the ear. In my mind, the sound of system prompts keeps coming out. More and more points are being accumulated. For every enemy killed, you can earn 2 points. At present, Zhu Cizhao's points are already 2,000. That is to say, this time, he annihilated 1,000 enemies. This was only done by these 10 German soldiers under his command. Just a Maxim is enough to scare the enemy. However, at this moment, Zhu Cizhao suddenly thought of a question. That's where did the ammunition come from? When I first drew out Maxim, I annihilated hundreds of enemies. The amount of ammunition consumed, at least a few thousand, right? This time, we have annihilated thousands of enemies and consumed thousands, even tens of thousands, of ammunition. In theory, is there so much ammunition that a Maxim can carry? Thinking of this, Zhu Cizhao immediately opened the system panel. Checked the page of the MG-08 Maxim machine gun. It's written on it. Every time you exchange a Maxim heavy machine gun, you can get 10,000 rounds of 7.92 mm ammunition. The exchange ratio for ammunition is 1 to 100. That is to say, each point can be exchanged for 100 rounds of ammunition. Moreover, exchanging points for ammunition does not vary by model. That is to say, the exchange rate for exchanging rifle ammunition and pistol ammunition is the same. After this calculation, it's still more cost-effective to exchange for Maxim. However, Maxim is a heavy machine gun and cannot be carried with him at any time. Even if carried with you, it is impossible to assemble it in place in an instant during an encounter. So, it is still necessary to equip infantry with bolt-action rifles. The bolt-action rifle is not as good as the Maxim in all aspects. But fortunately, bolt-action rifles are durable and have stronger mobility. Chapter 10. The merit of the Eternal King, has it all belonged to the Marquis of Jiading. You are listening at novelfull.audio. At critical moments, it can even be used as a sniper rifle. Soon, Zhu Cizhao exchanged 6 98K bolt-action rifles from the system. Currently, 8 people are equipped with bolt-action rifles. The remaining 2 people are responsible for operating and moving Maxim. And ahead, the remnants of the bandit army have all surrendered. 3,000 Ming soldiers with almost no casualties. They captured the remaining less than 3,000 bandits. Everyone knelt under the city wall, their weapons and armor unloaded. At this moment, Zhu Cizhao stood on the city wall. On both sides, there were German soldiers armed with Maxim machine guns and 8 German soldiers holding bolt-action rifles. Everyone looked up to Zhu Cizhao. Even the previously wavering Marquis of Jiading is now kneeling on the ground. Heavenly punishment. It must be a heavenly punishment. Zhu Cizhao is the savior of the Ming dynasty. At this point, Marquis Jiading had even secretly made up his mind to follow Zhu Cizhao from now on. But at this moment, Zhu Cizhao's heart was very conflicted. Because Maxim's ammunition has been used up. Just now, I spent another 100 points and exchanged 10,000 rounds of Maxim ammunition. And these 10,000 rounds of Maxim ammunition Zhu Cizhao planned to eliminate all 3,000 remaining soldiers in front of him. It's not because his idol is Bai Qi. But rather these 3,000 remaining soldiers, that's 6,000 points. What can 6,000 points be exchanged for? 5,000 points, that's a half-tracked armored vehicle. 10,000 points, you can even exchange it for a Panther tank. Thinking of this, Zhu Cizhao was really tempted. But would killing these 3,000 remaining soldiers make you appear too cruel? He turned his head to look at the Ming army behind him. I saw that the expressions of those Ming soldiers looking at the remnants of the enemy showed no mercy. It seems like I wish they were all dead. After all, it is because of them that the world is in chaos. Of course, the real cause of the chaos in the world is still the corruption and incompetence of the imperial court. But the lower-level officers and soldiers are not clear. They don't have time to think so much either. The only thing they can consider is what to eat tonight and whether they can survive tomorrow. Looking at the Ming army behind him, their eyes were empty. Although we won a battle. But their expressions remained dull. From the year of Tianqi to the 17th year of Chongzhen, the Ming dynasty experienced too much and too much. Some people say that the Ming dynasty has run out of energy and should have died long ago. Indeed, if Zhu Cizhao had not possessed this incredible system, the Ming dynasty would have forgotten it long ago. After a moment, Zhu Cizhao slowly turned his head and looked behind him, holding the German army of Maxim. Then, he waved his hand and said, "Leave no one behind." The German army did not answer, but directly pulled the trigger. Next second, countless bandit armies are rushing to the end. And others saw that the Ming army did not intend to keep them alive, so they all got up and wanted to fight back. Unfortunately, the bandit army at this time had no armor and no weapons in their hands. Even if it rushes under the city wall, what can it do? Even if the city gates are wide open, only 100 long spearmen are needed to turn away this group of rabble. Some people just turn around and want to run. On both sides, there are valleys. In the rear, there is also a Ming army unit. They have nowhere to escape. Maxim is water-cooled. When 1,000 bullets were fired, the surroundings were already shrouded in smoke. When 5,000 bullets were fired, the steam directly covered the entire city wall. The visible distance is even less than 10 meters. Finally, the machine gunner stopped pulling the trigger. It's not that all the enemies have been killed. Instead of empty ammunition. But the water vapor is really too strong. Continuing to fight would be a waste of bullets. After all, at this moment, the machine gunners on the city walls couldn't even see where the enemy was. As the thick fog gradually dissipates, the people on the city wall finally came to their senses. Under the city wall, bones everywhere. Maxim's immense power struck people's limbs, even tearing them apart directly. The blood of 3,000 people even dyed large areas of land under the city walls red. Although there are still about 100 people alive from the enemy. But the living have long been numb like chickens. Curled up in the corner, trembling. This scene is too cruel. This is simply a massacre. Marquis Jiading is about to lose sight of it. Many new recruits even vomited in place. At this moment, the sky suddenly shrouded in dark clouds. The heavy rain is tilting down. Zhu Cizhao stood on the city wall, watching the scene very calmly. At this point, Zhu Cizhao's number of points has reached 8,000. However, he was not in a hurry to exchange supplies. After all, I am in the camp of Marquis Jiading. Out of thin air, another group of Japanese devils appeared. Shouldn't Marquis Jiading be scared and foolish? After returning to the room, Zhu Cizhao changed into clean clothes. At this moment, Marquis Jiading also walked in. As soon as he entered the door, he bowed and said, "Prince, the battlefield has been cleared." In this battle, a total of 6,000 bandits' troops were hanged, and our army suffered 112 casualties. 12 people. Zhu Cizhao nodded slowly. Not bad, he is very satisfied with this achievement. The 12 people who died were all from the Marquis of Jiading. Soon, the news spread that 6,000 soldiers had been defeated by the 3,000 soldiers and horses of Marquis Jiading within a day. Within the forbidden city of Jinling, Prince Fu Zhu Youjian's face was shocked. But at the same time, he is also very happy. This battle, although not a big one, but it is the most beautiful battle that the Ming army has won in recent years. This battle will inevitably be promoted throughout the entire Ming dynasty to boost the morale of the Ming army. Tell the people of the world that the army of the king is not invincible. However, what made Zhu Youjian even more concerned was that Marquis Jiading was truly a talented general. How could one still fight such a beautiful battle in a situation where the enemy is twice as disadvantaged as oneself? Of course, no one knows that the enemy was basically killed by Zhu Cizhao. Even if Marquis Jiading said it was Zhu Cizhao, no one would believe it. Who would believe that a yellow-mouthed child could fight such a beautiful battle? A few days later, Zhu Youjian sent someone to congratulate Marquis Jiading. And I plan to reward Marquis Jiading with 1,000 taels of silver. In fact, this 1,000 taels of silver may not be worth the attention of Marquis Jiading. Mainly, this credit. If Zhu Youjian, the king of Fu, were to proclaim himself emperor someday, his position would surely rise to a higher level. Nowadays, the Marquis of Jiading has become popular throughout the entire Jiangnan region. The fire is in a mess. Many local armies have come to seek refuge with the Marquis of Jiading. I want to reunite with the Marquis of Jiading and restore the Ming dynasty together. Kill back to the capital. At first, Marquis Jiading looked awkwardly at Zhu Cizhao not far behind him. Later, it seemed that Zhu Cizhao had no intention of taking back the credit from Marquis Jiading. So, Marquis Jiading let nature take its course. Some officials nearby even occasionally give big gifts.